Hi. Many years ago, I published a pretty detailed teaching on 1 Timothy 5:17, which is a text often cited to defend the idea that pastors are entitled to be fully supported by the church. Now, in my video, I sought to demonstrate that the passage doesn't mean that at all, and that the double honor mentioned in the passage merely refers to the respect and value that is to be shown or extended to elders because of their age and because of their experience and work within the body of Christ. I'd encourage you that if you're interested in this teaching, feel free to watch that video, which I've posted in the comment section, and there will be a link at the end of this video. Now, although I feel that teaching was quite extensive and detailed, and I think I did substantiate my position quite well, there were some additional thoughts that I wanted to share that I believe helped to strengthen my position even more about that text. That the passage has nothing really to do with paying a pastor a salary. Now, 1 Timothy 5:17 speaks about a double honor that is to be given to the elders that rule well and labor in the word and doctrine. Now, the logical implication would seem to be that single honor is to be given to all the elders in the church that are not spiritual overseers and teachers. Now, in this context, an elder would generally be the older man in the church. I recall reading long ago that an elder was considered, basically was a man who had the ability to grow a white beard. So this could refer to men in their 50s, 60s and above and so forth. However, if we're going to insist that double honor means like double salary or wage or money, this would suggest that a single salary or a single wage, or maybe half the salary that the teaching elder gets, that's to be given to all the elders in the church who are not serving in some leadership and teaching capacity. So these could be healthy, fully functional men who even support themselves through their own secular trades, but just because they are old or older men and elders, they're entitled to some kind of money. Now, I hope you see how such a scenario would put an incredible strain on those churches during Paul's time. Please consider that most Christians in those churches were generally poor. And so was Paul basically expecting that Christians were not only responsible to support their own families, but to support the full-time ruling elders and teaching elders, but also to give a decent amount of money or some kind of money to all the other elders in the church just because they're old? Again, that would put such a huge unnecessary burden on the families in the church. And this would not work out in practice. It's unrealistic and it's just ridiculous. Now, however, when one understands Paul is not speaking about money, but he's speaking about respect and value, then it makes a lot of sense that the church is responsible to be respectful to all the elders in the church because of their age. And it's just that even more respect, or a double honor or respect, is to be given to the ruling and the teaching elders. So in other words, the teaching ruling elder is entitled to more honor and more respect because he's not only aged and experienced, but because of the good and noble work he's doing in the body of Christ. Now, the second point I want to bring out about this passage is that in the following chapter, we see Paul condemning the idea that godliness is a means of gaining material possessions or wealth. We read about this in 1 Timothy 6:5. Now, the context is dealing with false teachers, and Paul is simply pointing out one of the twisted ideas that such men have, and that is that being godly is a means to financial gain. As he says in the text, this is in the latter part of the passage, he describes those who have been robbed of the truth and who think that godliness is a means to financial gain. But is this not the very same idea that many people insist Paul is teaching in 1 Timothy 5:17? Many pastors and churches seem to believe that Paul is teaching in 1 Timothy 5:17 that being a faithful, godly pastor is a legitimate means of gaining wealth or gaining the double honor, which they interpret as money. Hope you can see how such an idea contradicts what Paul teaches in the very next chapter in regard to the view that many false teachers have in regard to godliness and gain. Right? Furthermore, just to reiterate points I've shared in the past, Paul himself was actually not a full-time pastor. He was a full-time Christian, and he had a full-time job as a tent maker, and he spent a lot of time preaching and ministering to others in his free time, and he did it for free, as 1 Corinthians 9:18 talks about. And Paul was a proponent of elders working a secular trade to support themselves, as Acts chapter 20, verse 34 and 35, and other texts imply. So this obviously conflicts with the traditional view of 1 Timothy 5:17 that Paul is supposedly calling for elders to be fully supported by the church, where they wouldn't really have to have some kind of secular trade to support themselves. Finally, I just want to reference a nice link that you can find in the summary section, and this link shows an article written by Russel Kelley. He actually has a doctorate in theology, and he wrote his doctoral thesis on the issue of tithing. And he shares a nice analysis of 1 Timothy 5:17, where he indicates that it's not referring to salary at all, but he believes it's basically referring to respect and value that is to be extended to elders, particularly when it comes to accusations that might be brought against the elder. What's very significant is this man used to be a full-time minister. But what is also interesting is that he actually believes that pastors are entitled to be supported. Right? So he differs with me on that issue. He believes that pastors are entitled to be supported, but he just doesn't think 1 Timothy 5:17 supports that idea. Now, of course, I don't agree with his position on pastors being employed by the church. And he and I actually had a brief email exchange about this where I was challenging his position, but we didn't see eye to eye, and he didn't seem to want to keep up the dialogue. So, but anyway, that's all for now. Please feel free to comment, and if you're interested in hearing more about this topic, feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you.